Dylan got in my face and crossed his arms. "You can't be here. This is my cliff." I told him this cliff was part of nature and didn't belong to anyone, then looked down at the 100-foot fall into the water. My legs shook, ready to do the cliff jump I'd been training for all summer. But then I felt Dylan shove me from behind. He knocked me off balance and I started descending 100 feet. I screamed, unable to control the fall, and smashed into the water face first. I came up 10 seconds later, water pouring from my nose as my whole body hurt. Dylan hurled through the air seconds later and landed in the water, pointing at me and laughing. "I told you this cliff was mine." At the hospital, doctors told me the impact had crushed my lungs, broken my jaw, my orbital bone, and both shins. I spent 6 months in the hospital getting surgeries and a hollow tube placed in my chest just so I could breathe again. My 2 brothers sat with me every day, swearing they'd get revenge on Dylan, but I stayed silent the whole time because even talking hurt too much. When I finally came back to school on crutches, Dylan took them from me on my first day. "What's wrong, Cliff Boy? Can't handle a little shove?" He shoved me in the back with the crutches just like before, and I immediately fell, my legs too weak to hold me up. I cried in pain as Dylan laughed, and at home told my brothers everything. The rest of the year, Dylan splashed me with water and hit my chest, knowing my lungs were weak, even threatening to push me again if I ever came to his cliff again. So I did. That summer, I walked up to the cliff, my heart pounding as I stepped with my crutches. Dylan was preparing to jump from 110 feet, and when he saw me, his face lit up. "Here to get pushed again?" He walked towards me, but I threw my hands up. "I'm not here to jump. I just want to watch you do what you're so good at." He laughed as I stroked his ego. "That's right, I'm the best." He turned around, but right as he started running towards the cliff, I stuck my foot out. Dylan tripped and face planted in the dirt. I laughed at him, but then I saw him curling his fists, ready to get up and beat me to a pulp. That's when I whistled. My 2 older brothers instantly emerged from the bushes and picked Dylan up before he could react. He thrashed, but they were too strong. I walked up to him. "Now say sorry or we're throwing you down." He instantly started begging. I'm sorry, please let me go." But I just shook my head. "I don't think so, Cliff Boy." I snapped my fingers, and my brothers tossed Dylan over, sending him flying 110 feet down his own cliff. I watched him smash into the water uncontrollably just like I had done, and laughed to myself. We'll see how he likes having no lungs. I was chipping a rare gem out of a cave wall in the Amazon rainforest when a tribe dropped down from the surface, circling me with daggers pointed at my chest. I threw my hands up, my heart hammering. My father spent his whole life hunting this gem and never found it, and now I had to make it out alive with this gem to complete his dying wish. I pulled out my phone and showed them a picture of the gem, hoping they'd let me go, but they started screaming in a language I couldn't understand and jabbing their daggers at my face like I offended them. "I'm just here for the gem, I swear." But 2 warriors ripped my backpack off my shoulders. "No, my gear, my samples." Then they slammed me to the ground as their shaman lifted my father's rare gem into a beam of light, glowing, shifting from milky white to deep violet, and the whole tribe dropped to their knees. That's when I realized they worshipped the stone because it glowed. So I dropped to my knees too and bowed at the gem, praying it would save me. But they all looked at me with disgust, yanking me up by my hair, furious that an outsider dared bow to their god. I begged, but they dragged me out of the cave, through the forest, and into their village, where a stone altar sat stacked with kindling. They forced me to my knees on top of it and tossed my backpack onto the pile beside me. When they raised their torches, it hit me. They were going to burn me alive, and I'd die without ever completing my father's wish. The torches dropped, and flames roared up around my knees. Then I remembered how their gem glowed, and it gave me the craziest idea. My UV flashlight could make my own stone samples glow the exact same way. So I lunged for the bag with shaking hands, and the tribe roared, shoving their torches into the kindling and pressing their daggers against my back. I grabbed the flashlight and a fistful of stones anyway, and swept the light over them as the flames climbed higher. They glowed and shifted from white to violet, the same glow as their god, and the whole tribe froze, then dropped to their knees in worship. Not for the stone this time, but for me, their new rock god. They doused the flames and pressed their sacred gem into my hands as a peace offering. My father never found it, while I walked out a rock god holding it. I was standing next to my brother Otto at his wedding when he stepped up to the mic, unfolded a piece of paper, and started reading the vows I wrote for my fiancée. I had left that paper on the kitchen counter at my parents' house 2 weeks ago. Otto had been doing this my whole life. Every dream I ever had out loud became his next achievement. At the reception, I told my fiancée Julie those were my vows, and she was quiet for a long time. He just took them like they meant nothing. We postponed our wedding that night, but by the time we got home, I knew exactly what I was going to do. I called a friend in real estate about a house that looked perfect from the outside and was falling apart on the inside. Flooded basement, black mold, cracks running through the whole foundation. I started bringing it up at every family dinner for 3 weeks straight. Julie stopped coming to family dinners after the vow thing, so I sat at the table alone and thought about her sitting alone at home, and it made the performance very easy. One night, I put my head in my hands funds. I had to let it go. I just could not save enough in time. I pushed a fake mortgage document across the table and shook my head. I just hope nobody buys it before I can. Otto was already on his phone. 2 days later, my real estate friend called me. Otto scheduled an inspection on the house. I sat down on the kitchen floor and stared at the wall because I thought it was all over. Then my friend called back a few hours later. He canceled it so he could close faster. I exhaled for the first time all day. 2 days later, Otto texted me a photo of the house keys. Looks like it was meant for me. You'll find something cheaper, I texted back. Congrats, hope it treats you well. He sent a laughing emoji. I put my phone down and went to tell Julie it was done. The first heavy rain of the season flooded his basement to the ceiling. Then cracks spread across the walls. Otto called me in tears. The house is going to collapse if I don't find $20,000 for repairs. A few weeks later, I walked into my parents' house for dinner, and Otto was already at the kitchen table with red eyes. My wife left me. I sat down. Why? She said buying the house was stupid. 2 months later, Otto was sleeping in our parents' basement because he couldn't afford the repairs, and Julie and I finally got married. I wrote even better vows, and she had never heard any of them before. Her face when I started the first line was worth every dinner I had sat through alone. I pressed the guard's master key into a bar of soap the second his back was turned, holding my breath while the shape of the key sank in. My cellmate Reggie stood in the doorway, blocking the guard's view with his body. I'd been sent to prison for a murder I didn't commit, and my lawyer had stopped picking up my calls. I had to take matters into my own hands, or I'd be facing the electric chair next week. Every night, I melted plastic spoons over a lighter. Reggie snuck in from the kitchen, pouring the melted plastic into the soap key bit by bit until it finally held its shape. A guard walked past my cell twice while I was in the middle of pouring, and both times I shoved everything under my mattress, my heart pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. On the 5th night, the key snapped clean in half the second I tried to test it in my own cell door, and I had to start the whole thing over with only 2 days left before my execution. Reggie grabbed my shoulder the night I finally made one that worked. You sure about this? I nodded, holding the finished key up with shaking hands. It's the only shot I've got left. That night during shift change, I slid the plastic key into my cell door, and it opened on the first try. I made it past 2 more locked doors before a guard's flashlight swept down the hallway, and I hid in a supply closet until his footsteps disappeared. I climbed the fence around the prison and ran straight to my lawyer's house to find out why she'd been ignoring my calls. She opened the door, pale and shaking, then stepped back to let me inside without a word. I followed her into the kitchen, where a folder sat closed on the table. The killer's brother threatened my daughter if I ever came forward with this. That's why I stopped answering. I didn't want you dragging me back into it. She slid the folder across the table toward me with both hands. But you don't deserve to die. I flipped it open, and inside were the real killer's fingerprints, which had been matched to the scene, and I finally felt hope that I would get to live. I turned myself back in that same night, holding the proof in my hands, and my execution was cancelled. I was jumping on my trampoline when the old man next door sprayed me in the face with his hose. I lost my balance and missed the trampoline completely when I came down. Mr. Crane, why would you do that? I could have been really hurt. Don't talk back to me, boy. I don't want to see you bouncing on that thing again, or I'll evict your family by the end of the week. He meant it. Mr. Crane was our landlord. He lived in the unit next door to us. We only ever saw him when he came to dig in his garden, or when he came to collect rent. The trampoline was my favorite thing in the backyard, so I decided to wait it out and come back when the coast was clear. A few hours later, I was jumping again. Every time I bounced, I could see into Mr. Crane's backyard. He was gardening again, but instead of planting flowers, I saw that he was burying a human hand. I bounced again. This time, when I looked over the fence, Mr. Crane was staring directly at me. I told you I didn't want you jumping on that damn thing anymore. Now you'll pay. He ran full speed and hopped the fence into my backyard. I used my jump to get as close to my back door as possible and ran into the house. He followed me up the stairs into my room and stood in the doorway swinging his shovel at me. I was trapped. I looked out the window into the backyard. Below me was the trampoline. I dove out and aimed for it. I hit the target perfectly and bounced onto the ground. Mr. Crane jumped after me, but I was able to grab our garden hose and spray him in the face the same way he did to me. He came down just as hard as I did earlier. When he landed, he dropped his shovel. I knocked him out and called the police. They searched his home and found the remains of the family who lived in our unit before us. My favorite pastime may have saved my life. I started stealing as much as I could as soon as the bank guard walked away from the vault door. I quietly cracked open every deposit box I saw, filling my bag with cash and jewelry. This was a black market bank. Everything inside inside belonged to the worst drug traffickers and war criminals on the planet, so I had no problems with draining their accounts. I had almost cleared out the entire vault when I came to box number 13. I popped the lock. Inside was a piece of paper and a gun, but that wasn't all. The box was rigged. When I opened it, the vault slammed shut and I was trapped. I flipped on my night vision goggles. I had to think quickly. The getaway van was only going to wait for another 90 seconds before it took off. I looked at the piece of paper from inside the box. It was a note. Nobody steals from me. If you're reading this, you're trapped and the guards are on the way. I've left you a gun with one bullet inside in case you want to take the easy way out. Because I promise you, if I take you alive, your fate will be much worse. It was signed by the most brutal cartel boss in the country. Just then, I heard the footsteps of guards outside the vault and the door started to open. 3 guards stood in front of me with their guns raised. The lone ceiling light outside the vault flickered one time and I realized that there was only one way out for me. I reached for the gun in the box. The guards moved closer. "Hey, freeze! What do you think you're doing?" I raised the gun and said, "Taking the easy way out." I shot the light and the room went pitch black. The guards stumbled around blindly. I flipped on my goggles and made quick work of all 3. Once they were knocked out, I threw them in the vault and shut the door. I ran outside and made it to the getaway van at the exact moment it started to pull away. I was hunting elk in the woods when I heard something whimpering under the snow. I dug 10 minutes and pulled out a pup, eyes barely open, ribs showing, too cold to shake. I wrapped him in my flannel and carried him 3 miles back to my cabin, hidden inside my jacket against my chest. He was barely breathing when I got home. I warmed milk and fed him drop by drop from an eyedropper until his tongue started moving. He slept on my chest that night and every night after. Another hour and he'd have been dead. 6 months later, I took him in for his shots. The vet asked his breed and I said he was a husky somebody dumped. He walked me into a back room and shut the door. "That's not a husky. That's a northwestern gray wolf. Maybe 200 left in this country." He slept in my lap on the way home with my hand on his head, and I never told a soul. I raised him like he was my own kid. 2 winters later, 3 trucks pulled up my driveway, and 3 men in camo got out with rifles. The lead one walked up to my porch like he owned it. "Got a tip you've been hiding something up here. Where is it?" I stepped outside and pulled the door shut behind me. "There's no animal." He laughed. "Come on, man. We know exactly what you got. That thing's worth 40 grand to a trophy hunter and we'll cut you in." I told him to get off my property. He held up a folded paper. "State signed off on it, friend. Ain't your pet? It's a wild animal." I didn't move. He cocked his rifle and aimed it at my chest. "We're walking out with that thing. Don't matter if you're standing there or not." That's when the door behind me flung open and 120 pounds of white fur came through it with his teeth already showing. He launched himself at the lead hunter. The rifle went flying into the porch ceiling while my boy held him down and opened his jaws. I closed my eyes as the hunter started screaming. The other 2 hunters dropped their rifles and ran. I opened my eyes. The lead hunter dragged himself away, missing a couple fingers off his shooting hand. He walked back to me, snow and blood on his mouth, and pushed his head into my hand. I'd spent 3 years thinking I was protecting him, but he'd been waiting for his turn to return the favor. He still sleeps on my chest every night, and nobody comes up that mountain to bother us anymore. I went for a jump shot during recess, and the new kid Caleb punched me in the face while I was in the air. I fell on the ground hard and hit my head, but he simply grabbed the ball, no blood, no foul, then ran down the other end and scored. I got up clutching my head, but next time I grabbed the ball, he shoulder tackled me like this was football. Where I'm from, this is soft. He stood over me. I looked around and saw everyone scared of him because he was buff and had at least 5 inches on everyone. The next day during recess, Caleb tripped the smallest kid on the court. I clenched my fists, but knew there was nothing I could do. My friends cleared out, no longer wanting to play with him, and that's when Caleb's eyes locked onto me. "Me and you, one-on-one." He threw the ball at my chest. The first play, Caleb pushed me into a metal pole and my nose started bleeding. But the next time I got the ball, I threw up a shot. He shoved me to the floor, but the ball was already in the air. It swished and everyone cheered. I grinned from the floor. "And one bitch." But suddenly Caleb clenched his teeth. My heart sank as he raised his shoe and he stomped on my arm hard before I could move it. I screamed in pain as it was bent the wrong way, while Caleb laughed. "Where's your N1 now?" I spent a week in the hospital with a broken arm, and when I came back with my arm in a cast, Caleb had again forced everyone to play. I watched him tackle another kid and had enough. I stepped onto the court. Caleb smirked. "You want your other arm broken? Remember, no blood, no foul." But I just nodded because I had a plan. The first time Caleb caught the ball and drove to the rim, I waited until he was in the air. Then I instantly got under him and bent over. Caleb's eyes widened in horror as he realized what I was doing, and his knees hit my hip, sending him flying over me. He landed face first on the concrete he'd shoved me and started groaning in pain. 3 of his teeth were scattered around him as red pooled under his face. I knelt down. "No blood, no foul, Caleb." Caleb. He came back to school 4 weeks later, but when I took a shot, he tried to defend normally. We still let him play, but he never tried to injure anyone again.